The early morning light filtered through the smudged windows of Amanda Reyes's cramped studio apartment in Queens, illuminating dust particles that danced above stacks of unpaid bills and empty takeout containers that told the story of another week of poor choices. At 28, Amanda possessed the kind of natural beauty that her grandmother used to say could stop traffic, but years of stress eating, irregular sleep, and the relentless pace of New York City had taken their toll on both her body and her spirit. She stood before her bathroom mirror, avoiding her own reflection as she had learned to do over the past 3 years, focusing instead on brushing her teeth with the mechanical precision of someone going through the motions of daily life without truly living it. The alarm from her phone buzzed insistently from the bedroom, reminding her that another day at the restaurant awaited, another 8 hours of preparing food that she had once loved but now viewed as the enemy. Amanda worked as a line cook at Meridian Bistro in Midtown Manhattan, an upscale establishment where wealthy customers paid premium prices for dishes that she could prepare blindfolded but could no longer afford to enjoy without guilt. The irony wasn't lost on her that someone who had dreamed of becoming a chef since childhood now felt defeated every time she entered a kitchen. Her phone rang as she was gathering her things for the subway commute, her mother's contact photo appearing on the screen with a mixture of love and concern that made Amanda's chest tighten with familiar anxiety. Maria Elena Reyes had been calling more frequently over the past month, her voice carrying the subtle strain of someone trying to sound stronger than she felt. Amanda answered on the third ring, already knowing that the conversation would leave her feeling both motivated and overwhelmed. "Mija, how are you feeling today?" her mother asked in the gentle Spanish-accented English that had provided comfort throughout Amanda's childhood, but now carried undertones of worry that neither woman wanted to acknowledge directly. "I'm okay, Mummy. Just getting ready for work." "How did you sleep?" Amanda replied, settling into the familiar dance of concern that had defined their relationship since her father's death 5 years earlier. "The doctor says my numbers are getting worse, Amanda. The diabetes, the blood pressure, everything. He wants me to start insulin, but I told him I want to try changing my diet first. You know how I am about medications." Amanda closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy coat that never quite fit properly. Her mother had been struggling with weight-related health issues for over a decade, a combination of genetic predisposition, economic stress, and the comfort food culture that had sustained their family through difficult times. The traditional Mexican dishes that represented love, celebration, and cultural identity had become a double-edged sword in a society that offered few healthy alternatives at affordable prices. "What did the nutritionist say?" Amanda asked, though she already suspected the answer would involve generic advice about portion control and exercise that ignored the complex realities of working-class life in America. "She gave me these printed sheets with meal plans, but Amanda, the food looks so sad. Boiled chicken and steamed vegetables, no flavor, no soul. How am I supposed to eat like that for the rest of my life? Food is supposed to bring joy, not feel like punishment." The conversation continued for 20 minutes as Amanda made her way through Queens toward the subway station, passing bodegas, taco trucks, and fast food restaurants that provided convenient but nutritionally questionable options for people whose schedules didn't accommodate elaborate meal preparation. She listened to her mother describe the overwhelming nature of medical advice that seemed disconnected from cultural reality, dietary restrictions that felt like cultural erasure, and the fear of losing the few pleasures that made daily struggles bearable. "Mummy, what if we worked on this together?" Amanda found herself saying, the words emerging before her conscious mind had fully formed the thought. "I mean, I'm a chef. I should be able to figure out how to make healthy food that still tastes like home." The idea had been lurking in the back of her mind for months, inspired by late-night scrolling through social media, where food bloggers and influencers seem to effortlessly combine wellness with aesthetic appeal. But those creators typically had professional kitchens, unlimited budgets, and bodies that suggested they had never struggled with the relationship between food and self-worth that dominated Amanda's daily experience. "You think you could help me, but Mija, you work so much, and I know you have your own things to figure out. Maybe helping you is exactly what I need to help myself," Amanda replied, surprised by the conviction in her own voice. The subway ride to Manhattan provided 45 minutes of relative solitude, where Amanda allowed her mind to wander through possibilities that felt both exciting and terrifying. She began mentally cataloging the dishes from her childhood that could potentially be modified without losing their essential character, considering ingredient substitutions that might reduce calories and increase nutrition while preserving the flavors that made food feel like love rather than fuel. Her grandmother's pozole could probably be lightened with turkey instead of pork, and the mesa could be reduced without destroying the soup's satisfying heartiness. The mole that took 3 days to prepare could potentially incorporate more vegetables and less chocolate without losing its complex depth. Meridian Bistro occupied the ground floor of a glass tower in Midtown, its sleek interior design projecting the kind of effortless sophistication that attracted customers willing to pay $30 for entrees that cost less than $5 to prepare. Amanda arrived to find the kitchen already bustling with prep cooks, dishwashers, and fellow line cooks preparing for another day of feeding people whose relationship with food seemed refreshingly uncomplicated compared to her own struggles. Head chef Marcus Williams was a talented but demanding leader whose kitchen operated with military precision and zero tolerance for personal drama interfering with professional performance. He had hired Amanda based on her technical skills and cultural knowledge of Mexican cuisine, which had become increasingly popular among the restaurant's affluent clientele. However, their relationship had grown strained over the past year as Amanda's enthusiasm for cooking had visibly diminished, replaced by mechanical competence that got the job done without inspiring anyone. "Reyes, I need to talk to you after service," Marcus said as Amanda tied her apron and began reviewing the day's prep list. "Your knife work has been solid, but your energy is affecting the whole line. Whatever's going on in your personal life, you need to figure it out or find somewhere else to work." The warning felt like a wake-up call that arrived at precisely the moment Amanda was beginning to consider alternative directions for her career. She had been coasting for months, showing up physically while remaining emotionally absent, going through the motions of professional cooking without the passion that had originally drawn her to the culinary arts. The threat of losing her job felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating, forcing her to confront the reality that her current path was unsustainable, both financially and psychologically. During her lunch break, Amanda found herself in Bryant Park, eating a quinoa salad from a health-conscious food truck, while observing the diverse crowd of office workers, tourists, and street performers who created the vibrant energy that made New York City feel like the center of the universe. She pulled out her phone and began researching healthy Mexican recipes, discovering a surprisingly active online community of people attempting to balance cultural authenticity with contemporary nutritional knowledge. The more she read, the more convinced she became that there was space for someone who understood both the emotional significance of traditional foods and the practical challenges faced by working families trying to eat healthier without sacrificing flavor or breaking their budgets. Most healthy eating content seemed to be created by people whose lives bore little resemblance to the experiences of first-generation Americans, balancing multiple jobs, extended family responsibilities, and the psychological complexities of maintaining cultural identity while adapting to American lifestyle expectations. That evening, Amanda called her mother with a proposal that felt both ambitious and necessary. She would spend the next month developing 10 healthy meal recipes that honored their Mexican heritage, while addressing the dietary requirements prescribed by Maria Elena's medical team. Each dish would be photographed, tested for both flavor and nutritional content, and documented with detailed instructions that could be followed by home cooks with limited time and equipment. "But Misha, who would want to see these recipes besides us?" her mother asked, though Amanda could hear the excitement beginning to build in her voice. "Maybe other families dealing with the same problems we are. Maybe other people who love their culture but need to take better care of their health. Maybe people who are tired of choosing between food that tastes good and food that makes them feel good." As Amanda hung up the phone and began sketching recipe ideas in a notebook that had been gathering dust for over a year, she felt a familiar stirring of creative energy that she had thought was permanently lost. The challenge of creating delicious, healthy, culturally authentic meals felt like a puzzle worthy of her skills and a purpose worthy of her time. For the first time in months, she found herself looking forward to cooking not as an obligation or a paycheck, but as an expression of love for the people who mattered most to her. The transformation wouldn't be easy, and Amanda understood that changing lifelong eating habits would require more than just better recipes. But as she fell asleep that night, surrounded by cookbooks and nutritional guides, she felt the first stirrings of hope that had sustained her through culinary school and could potentially carry her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Amanda's kitchen looked like a battlefield by the end of her first weekend of recipe development, with every surface covered in measuring cups, cutting boards, and ingredients in various states of preparation. She had converted her modest Queen's apartment into a test kitchen, investing her entire paycheck in organic vegetables, lean proteins, and whole grains that represented a significant upgrade from her usual grocery shopping habits. The transformation of her living space felt symbolic of the larger changes she was attempting to make in her relationship with food and her sense of purpose. The first recipe she tackled was her grandmother's chicken enchiladas, a dish that had been a weekend staple throughout her childhood, but packed enough calories and sodium to derail any reasonable diet plan. Amanda spent hours experimenting with corn tortillas versus whole wheat, Greek yogurt versus sour cream, and various combinations of cheese that might provide flavor without completely undermining the dish's nutritional value. Her apartment filled with the aromas of cumin, chili powder, and roasted tomatoes that transported her back to childhood. Sunday afternoons spent watching her abuela work magic in the kitchen with ingredients that seemed to multiply through love rather than precise measurement. Her mother arrived around noon, moving more slowly than Amanda remembered, but carrying the same infectious enthusiasm for cooking that had inspired Amanda's original career choice. Maria Elena surveyed the chaos of the kitchen with the practiced eye of someone who had managed family meals for 3 decades on budgets that required creativity and resourcefulness rather than abundant financial resources. "Mija, this looks like you're feeding an army instead of developing recipes," she said, settling carefully into one of Amanda's mismatched kitchen chairs. "Your grandmother always said that cooking with anger or desperation produces bitter food. You need to find your joy again before you can help anyone else." The observation stung because it contained obvious truth that Amanda had been avoiding. Her approach to this project had been driven more by anxiety about her mother's health and frustration with her own body than by the genuine love of cooking that had once defined her identity. She was treating recipe development like a problem to be solved, rather than an opportunity to explore the intersection of culture, nutrition, and pleasure that made food one of life's great experiences. "How do I find joy when everything feels so overwhelming?" Amanda asked, pausing her frantic chopping to look directly at her mother for the first time since she had arrived. "Start with one dish that makes you remember why you fell in love with cooking. Not because it's healthy or because it will help me lose weight, but because it connects you to something beautiful about our family and our culture." Amanda considered the suggestion while reviewing the scattered recipes and nutritional calculations that covered her dining table. Her grandmother's pozole rojo had always been her favorite dish to prepare because it required patience, attention to detail, and the kind of multi-layered flavors that developed over hours of careful tending. The traditional version was indeed heavy with pork and high in sodium, but the essential character of the dish came from the complex chile broth and the ritual of preparing it with care rather than speed. She decided to start over with a single recipe, approaching it as an act of cultural preservation rather than dietary restriction. The pozole would be lightened with turkey instead of pork, the broth would be enriched with additional vegetables, and the traditional accompaniments would be adjusted to include more fresh herbs and less fried garnishes. But the fundamental process of roasting chilies, building layers of flavor, and allowing time for the ingredients to marry would remain unchanged. As Amanda began the meditative process of preparing dried chilies for the broth, her mother shared stories about learning to cook from Amanda's great-grandmother, a woman who had immigrated from Jalisco in the 1940s and adapted her family recipes to ingredients available in Los Angeles markets. Each generation had made modifications based on health concerns, budget constraints, and ingredient availability, proving that cultural authenticity was more about preserving love and care than maintaining identical ingredients across decades. Food is supposed to nourish the body and the soul, Maria Elena explained, while helping Amanda strain the chile mixture that would become the base of their pozole. When we eat only to lose weight or only to follow rules, we lose the connection between food and life. But when we eat to celebrate our culture, to care for our families, to express creativity, then even healthy food can feed the parts of us that don't show up on scales or blood tests. The pozole simmered for 3 hours, filling Amanda's apartment with aromas that seemed to dissolve the stress that had been building in her shoulders for months. She found herself relaxing into the rhythm of cooking, tasting and adjusting seasonings based on instinct rather than measurements, trusting her palate to guide decisions that no cookbook could make for her. This was the aspect of cooking she had missed most during her months of mechanical food preparation at the restaurant, the creative problem-solving that turned basic ingredients into expressions of care and cultural identity. When they finally sat down to eat, Amanda felt nervous anticipation that reminded her of presenting dishes to culinary school instructors whose approval could make or break her confidence. The pozole looked beautiful in her mismatched bowls, garnished with crisp radishes, fresh oregano, and lime wedges that added brightness to the rich, complex broth. The turkey had absorbed the chili flavors while remaining tender, and the hominy provided satisfying texture without the heaviness of the traditional pork version. Her mother took the first spoonful thoughtfully, her expression revealing the complex evaluation process of someone whose relationship with this dish spanned decades of family celebrations. Amanda held her breath, recognizing that this moment would determine whether her approach to healthy recipe development had merit, or whether she had simply created an inadequate imitation of something that didn't need improvement. "Amanda, this tastes like home," Maria Elena said finally, her voice carrying surprise and relief. "It's different, but it's still pozole. It still carries the love and the tradition. But now I can eat it without feeling guilty or worried about my blood sugar." The success of that first recipe provided momentum for the rest of the month, during which Amanda developed 9 additional dishes that balanced cultural authenticity with contemporary nutritional understanding. She created turkey and black bean tacos with whole wheat tortillas and avocado crema, chicken mole lightened with additional vegetables and reduced chocolate, and a quinoa-stuffed poblano pepper that honored the traditional chiles rellenos while providing complete protein and fiber that would satisfy hunger for hours rather than minutes. Each recipe was photographed with Amanda's phone using natural light from her apartment window, accompanied by detailed nutritional information that she calculated using online databases and dietary software. She began documenting the cooking process on social media, initially sharing photos and tips with family members and friends who expressed interest in healthier versions of their favorite dishes. The response was immediate and encouraging. Cousins in Los Angeles began requesting specific recipe modifications. Friends from culinary school shared her posts with their own networks, and even some of her co-workers at Meridian Bistro began asking for advice about preparing healthier meals at home. Amanda realized that she had identified a genuine need in her community. People who wanted to maintain their cultural food traditions while adapting to health requirements that seemed to conflict with everything they had learned about cooking from previous generations. By the end of the month, Amanda had completed her collection of 10 healthy recipes, each tested multiple times and adjusted based on feedback from her mother and extended family members who served as willing taste testers. The project had transformed not only her approach to cooking, but also her relationship with her own body and sense of professional purpose. She had lost 12 pounds without consciously dieting, simply by preparing and eating foods that nourished rather than comforted her anxiety. More importantly, she had rediscovered the creative satisfaction that had originally drawn her to cooking as a career. The challenge of preserving cultural identity while promoting health had engaged her problem-solving abilities in ways that her restaurant job had stopped providing months earlier. She felt like herself again, confident, creative, and connected to something larger than her individual concerns about weight and career advancement. Her mother's most recent doctor's appointment had produced encouraging results, with blood sugar levels showing improvement and blood pressure medications reduced for the first time in 2 years. The changes weren't dramatic enough to suggest miraculous transformation, but they indicated that sustainable lifestyle modifications were possible without sacrificing the cultural foods that provided emotional and social connection. As Amanda prepared for her next shift at Meridian Bistro, she felt a subtle but significant shift in her perspective on professional cooking. Instead of viewing her job as a source of stress and compromise, she began seeing it as an opportunity to develop skills that could eventually serve a larger purpose. The precision, efficiency, and creativity required in restaurant kitchens were exactly the abilities she would need to expand her healthy recipe project beyond her immediate family and friend network. The notification sound from Amanda's phone interrupted her morning routine with increasing frequency as her social media posts about healthy Mexican recipes began attracting attention from strangers across the country. What had started as a personal project shared with family and friends had evolved into something approaching a following, with people requesting specific recipe modifications, sharing their own cooking successes, and asking detailed questions about ingredient substitutions that Amanda found herself researching during her commute to work. She had been posting consistently for 6 weeks, documenting not only the finished dishes, but also the process of developing recipes that honored cultural traditions while meeting contemporary nutritional requirements. Her photos were amateur compared to professional food bloggers, but they possessed an authenticity that seemed to resonate with people who were tired of perfectly staged content that bore no resemblance to real home cooking experiences. Marcus Williams noticed the change in Amanda's energy before she mentioned her side project, commenting that her knife work had regained its precision and her interactions with other kitchen staff had become more positive and collaborative. The creative outlet was clearly benefiting her restaurant performance, providing a sense of purpose that elevated her professional cooking beyond mere job requirements. "Reyes, whatever you're doing outside of work, keep it up," he said during a brief lull in lunch service. "You're cooking like you actually want to be here again." Amanda decided to share her recipe project with Marcus, showing him photos and nutritional analyses on her phone during their break. His response surprised her, with its enthusiasm and business-minded perspective on what she had been treating primarily as a personal mission to help her mother and extended community. "This is exactly what the food industry needs," Marcus said, scrolling through her collection of before and after photos showing traditional dishes alongside their healthy modifications. Everyone's talking about wellness and cultural food, but most of the content is created by people who don't actually understand the communities they're trying to serve. You have credibility that can't be manufactured. The conversation planted seeds of possibility that Amanda hadn't seriously considered. Marcus suggested that she document her recipes more systematically, potentially developing them into a cookbook or online course that could reach people beyond her immediate social media network. He offered to help her create more professional quality photographs using the restaurant's equipment and lighting during slower periods, recognizing that visual presentation was crucial for food content in digital markets. Amanda's confidence grew as she received increasingly detailed feedback from people who had successfully prepared her recipes and reported positive results, both in terms of taste and health outcomes. A woman in Phoenix shared that her teenage daughter, who had been resistant to traditional Mexican foods because of their caloric content, was now helping prepare Amanda's lightened versions of family recipes. A man in Chicago reported that his doctor had commented on improved blood work after 3 months of incorporating Amanda's meal plans into his weekly routine. The most meaningful response came from a food blogger in San Antonio who had a substantial following focused on Mexican-American cuisine. She had tried Amanda's turkey pozole recipe and featured it in her newsletter, crediting Amanda with creating a version that preserved the dish's cultural significance while addressing health concerns that affected many families in their community. "Your approach is different from most healthy food content," the blogger wrote in a direct message. "You're not telling people to abandon their culture to be healthy. You're showing them how to love their culture in ways that also love their bodies. That's revolutionary." Amanda began receiving invitations to participate in online cooking demonstrations, guest post opportunities for established food blogs, and inquiries from people interested in commissioning custom recipe development for their specific dietary needs. The attention was flattering, but also overwhelming, as she realized that her personal project had grown beyond what she could manage while working full-time at the restaurant. The tipping point came when a literary agent reached out through Instagram, expressing interest in representing Amanda for a potential cookbook deal. The message arrived during her subway commute, and Amanda found herself reading it multiple times to convince herself that it wasn't a scam or misunderstanding. "I represent several cookbook authors in the cultural cuisine space," the agent wrote, "and I believe your approach to healthy Mexican cooking could appeal to a broad audience that's currently underserved by existing publications. Would you be interested in discussing the possibility of developing your recipe collection into a book proposal?" Amanda screenshot the message and immediately sent it to her mother, who called within minutes with excitement and concern competing in her voice. "Mija, this is incredible. But are you ready for something this big? A cookbook is serious business, and you still have your job at the restaurant to think about." The question forced Amanda to confront decisions she had been postponing while focusing on recipe development and social media engagement. Her project had grown to the point where it demanded more time and energy than she could provide while maintaining her current employment. But leaving the financial security of her restaurant position felt terrifyingly risky. That evening, Amanda created a detailed analysis of her options, listing the potential benefits and risks of pursuing cookbook publication versus maintaining her current career trajectory. The restaurant job provided steady income, health insurance, and professional cooking experience, but it offered limited opportunities for advancement and left her feeling creatively unfulfilled. The cookbook possibility promised creative freedom, potential financial rewards, and the opportunity to impact public health through food education. But it also involved uncertain income and the pressure of building a business without guaranteed success. She spent the weekend reviewing successful cookbook authors' career paths, researching the publishing industry's requirements and timelines, and calculating the financial resources she would need to support herself during the months required to complete a book proposal. The research was encouraging, but sobering, revealing that cookbook success required not only culinary skills, but also marketing abilities, social media expertise, and business acumen that she had never needed in restaurant environments. Her decision crystallized during a conversation with Dr. Sarah Martinez, a nutritionist who had been following Amanda's social media content and reached out to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. Dr. Martinez worked with low-income communities in the Bronx, providing nutrition education that struggled to overcome cultural barriers and economic constraints that made healthy eating seem impossible rather than achievable. "What you're doing addresses the biggest challenges I face in my work," Dr. Martinez explained during their phone conversation. "I can give people all the nutritional science in the world, but if the food doesn't connect to their cultural identity and family traditions, they won't sustain the changes. Your recipes prove that healthy eating and cultural authenticity can coexist." The conversation helped Amanda understand that her project had implications beyond personal cooking preferences or individual weight loss goals. She was contributing to public health discussions about how food policy and nutrition education could better serve diverse communities whose dietary traditions had been ignored or pathologized by mainstream health recommendations. The following Monday, Amanda requested a meeting with Marcus to discuss reducing her restaurant hours to part-time while she pursued cookbook development. To her surprise, he was supportive and even offered to serve as a professional reference and consultant for any questions about recipe scaling, food safety, or commercial cooking applications. "Reyes, you found something that matters to you beyond just earning a paycheck," he said. "That's rare in this industry, and when someone finds their real calling, smart people get out of their way and try to help however they can." Amanda called the literary agent that afternoon and scheduled a phone consultation to discuss the cookbook development process. The conversation was encouraging and intimidating in equal measure, revealing the extensive work required to transform her collection of family-tested recipes into a commercially viable book that could compete in an increasingly crowded marketplace. But as Amanda hung up the phone and looked around her apartment, which had been transformed into a test kitchen filled with notebooks, printed recipes, and nutritional reference materials, she felt the same sense of rightness that had guided her decision to attend culinary school, despite her family's concerns about the financial risks of pursuing artistic careers. She was ready to bet on herself and her belief that there were thousands of people who shared her desire to maintain cultural food traditions while adapting to contemporary health requirements. The cookbook would be her way of scaling the help she had been able to provide to her mother, extending it to families across the country who were navigating similar challenges with food, health, and cultural identity. 6 months later, Amanda stood in her newly rented test kitchen space in Long Island City, surrounded by professional-grade equipment and natural light that made her food photography rival that of established cookbook authors. The transformation from restaurant-line cook to full-time recipe developer and content creator had been more challenging than she had anticipated, requiring business skills, marketing knowledge, and financial management abilities that culinary school had never addressed. But the sense of purpose and creative satisfaction made every difficult moment worthwhile. Her cookbook proposal had been accepted by a mid-sized publisher specializing in cultural cuisine, with a publication date scheduled for the following spring that would position her book to capitalize on New Year's resolution season, when healthy eating content typically performed best. The advance was modest, but sufficient to support her transition to entrepreneurial independence, especially combined with income from sponsored social media content, online cooking classes, and recipe development consulting for food companies. The book, titled Corazon's saludable traditional Mexican flavors for modern health would feature 50 recipes that demonstrated how cultural food traditions could be preserved while adapting to contemporary nutritional understanding. Each recipe included cultural context, nutritional analysis, and modifications for various dietary restrictions, creating a resource that honored both heritage and health in ways that existing cookbooks had failed to achieve. Amanda's social media following had grown to over 200,000 people across various platforms, creating a community of home cooks who shared recipe modifications, celebrated cooking successes, and supported each other's health journeys through culturally relevant food choices. The engagement was remarkable, with followers regularly sharing photos of their own cooking attempts and reporting positive health outcomes that their doctors attributed to sustained dietary improvements. The most rewarding aspect of Amanda's work was the feedback from families who had used her recipes to address health challenges while maintaining their cultural food traditions. A grandmother in Texas wrote that her diabetic husband could finally enjoy pozole again, after years of avoiding the dish due to his dietary restrictions. A mother in California reported that her children, who had been rejecting Mexican food in favor of processed American alternatives, were now helping prepare traditional dishes in their healthier versions. Her mother's health had continued to improve, with her most recent medical checkup showing blood sugar levels within normal ranges and blood pressure medication reduced to the lowest dosage her doctor had prescribed in over 5 years. Maria Elena had become Amanda's most enthusiastic recipe tester and social media supporter, appearing in cooking videos that demonstrated the intergenerational transmission of culinary knowledge while adapting to contemporary health requirements. "Mia, you didn't just help me lose weight," her mother told her during one of their weekly cooking sessions that had become content creation opportunities. "You helped me remember that taking care of my body is a way of honoring everything our family sacrificed to give us better lives. Food can be medicine when it's prepared with love and intention." The comment had prompted Amanda to expand her mission beyond individual recipe development to include broader conversations about how food policy, healthcare access, and cultural preservation intersected in ways that affected entire communities. She began collaborating with public health organizations, nutrition educators, and community health centers to develop culturally appropriate wellness programs that address the specific challenges faced by Latino families navigating American healthcare systems. Dr. Sarah Martinez had become a frequent collaborator, helping Amanda understand the medical research behind her recipe modifications and providing scientific credibility that enhanced her cookbook's potential impact on public health outcomes. Their partnership had led to speaking opportunities at medical conferences, nutrition education workshops, and community health fairs, where Amanda demonstrated how traditional cooking methods could be adapted to support disease prevention and management. The success had also attracted attention from food industry companies interested in Amanda's expertise in developing products that appealed to health-conscious Latino consumers. She had consulted on seasoning blends, frozen meal formulations, and restaurant menu development projects that applied her principles to commercial food production. The work was lucrative, but required careful navigation to maintain her credibility as an advocate for authentic cultural cuisine, rather than a spokesperson for processed food marketing. Amanda's relationship with cooking had been fundamentally transformed through the process of building her business around helping others achieve similar transformation. The anxiety and guilt that had characterized her eating habits for years had been replaced by confident appreciation for food as both fuel and pleasure, cultural expression and health promotion. She had learned to trust her body's hunger and satisfaction cues while making choices that supported her energy, mood, and long-term health goals. The cookbook's completion deadline was approaching, requiring final recipe testing, photography, and manuscript editing that would determine whether her vision could be successfully translated into a format that would reach readers across the country. Amanda felt confident about the content, but nervous about the public reception, recognizing that cookbook success required not only culinary expertise, but also marketing savvy and media presence that would introduce her work to potential readers. Her publisher had arranged a series of promotional appearances, including morning show cooking demonstrations, podcast interviews, and food festival presentations that would showcase her recipes to audiences beyond her existing social media followers. The prospect of public speaking was intimidating, but Amanda understood that sharing her story was essential to reaching people who might benefit from her approach to healthy cultural cooking. As Amanda put the finishing touches on her final recipe, a chocolate mole that used cacao powder and natural sweeteners to create indulgent flavor with significantly reduced sugar content, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a defeated line cook to a cookbook author with a platform for promoting positive change through food education. The transformation hadn't been easy, requiring her to overcome self-doubt, financial uncertainty, and the challenge of building expertise in business areas completely unrelated to cooking. But the work had connected her to a sense of purpose that made every difficult moment worthwhile, proving that careers built around serving others could be both personally fulfilling and professionally sustainable. Her phone buzzed with a message from the literary agent who had first recognized the potential of her recipe project, sharing early reviews from cookbook industry publications that praised her unique approach to cultural cuisine and health promotion. The feedback was encouraging, suggesting that her book would find its intended audience and potentially inspire other home cooks to pursue similar integration of cultural authenticity with contemporary wellness priorities. That evening, Amanda and her mother prepared dinner together using recipes that would appear in the cookbook, their conversation flowing between Spanish and English as they discussed ingredient modifications, cooking techniques, and family memories associated with each dish. The kitchen was filled with the aromas of cumin, lime, and fresh cilantro that had defined Amanda's childhood and would hopefully define her professional legacy. As they sat down to eat, Amanda felt grateful for the journey that had brought her from personal struggle to professional purpose, from individual healing to community service. The cookbook represented not just a collection of recipes, but a bridge between cultural preservation and health promotion that could potentially impact thousands of families navigating similar challenges with food, identity, and wellness. The final chapter of her story was just beginning, with international cookbook rights already under negotiation and discussions underway for a television cooking show that would expand her platform for promoting healthy cultural cuisine. Amanda knew that success would bring new challenges and responsibilities, but she felt prepared to meet them with the same combination of cultural pride and nutritional knowledge that had guided her transformation from the beginning.